Hey everybody, in this video I want to show a couple of recent acquisitions. So if you're like me, you collect Stephen King books, of course, but you also collect related items and objects. For instance, you may have noticed over my shoulder my collection of Stephen King related Funko Pops. I also collect books about Stephen King. It seems like there's been as many, probably far more books about Stephen King than there have been books actually written by Stephen King, which is saying a lot because he's such a prolific author. But when it comes, so I paraphrase in an essay that Stephen King wrote about his influences. He was talking about the author Robert Bloch, who wrote Psycho, and Stephen King said, when it came to horror, Robert Bloch was like a pusher with the best stuff. When it comes to Stephen King trivia and history and background, Bev Vincent is like a pusher with the best stuff. And I was really excited to add this book to my collection recently, Stephen King, A Complete Exploration of His Work, Life, and Influences by Bev Vincent. If you watched my other videos on the channel, when I provide or attempt to provide historical context for the work, and I talk about what was happening in Stephen King's life and trivia and behind the scenes factoids, more often than not, that information is sort of synthesized from things that I've read that Bev Vincent has written. So to have an entire book, a large, glossy, fully illustrated book by Bev Vincent, all about Stephen King, his life, his influences, trivia about the books, trivia about the movies, just trivia about all things Stephen King, is really exciting. So I want to show you a little bit inside this book. I picked this up off of Amazon, and it was, 20 bucks or so. So when it comes to Stephen King collecting, there's some things that are extremely expensive and high dollar items, but also plenty of cool stuff that comes along that does not break the bank. I won't go over this entire book with you, but it's around 250 pages, and it covers Stephen King's early life. Talks about, I've not read the whole thing, I've thoroughly enjoyed glancing through it, but his college years, his original story, Sales, which of course Noah, my collaborator on the channel, has this very magazine, because of course he does. Talks about the Doubleday years, Stephen King looking snazzy in this original author photo. So here's something, like right out of the gate, here's something that I didn't know. The famous story behind Carrie is that Stephen King threw the pages, the original pages he had typed, into the garbage, and his wife Tabitha pulled them out and read them over and said, "This is interesting, you should go on." And ultimately the dedication page for Carrie famously says, "This is for Tabby, who got me into it and then bailed me out of it." I've already learned so many things from this book. For instance, the original text of the dedication page said, "This is for Tabby, who forced me into it." Not quite as generous, not quite as positive. I didn't know that. It's interesting stuff. Salem's Lot. Salem's Lot, original title was going to be Second Coming, but Tabitha said it sounded like a sex manual, so she convinced him to change the title. It's a photo from Stephen King's photo album, and that the caption says Marston House. So is that the original inspiration for the legendary Marston House from Salem's Lot? I mean, it talks about the variant jackets on Salem's. It has a whole chapter, Stephen King as Richard Bachman. I mean, this is good stuff. If you're remotely curious about the trivia of Stephen King, it's the original Goya painting that was the inspiration for the original cover of The Stand. I mean, just fascinating, interesting stuff. It moves on into the 80s. Unseen King. My favorite, the ultimate Pennywise will always be Tim Curry from the mini-series. Anyway, moves on into, talks about the movies. Of course, the 4 kids from Stand By Me. And it moves on into the current day. And like anything, you know, it's only as current as it can be with the data that was known when it was published. But this one, even though it's just a couple of paragraphs, it does cover Fairy Tale from 2022, which is of course very recent. And in this appendix, books by Stephen King, it actually includes Holly. So Holly will be coming out this year, 2023. It hasn't come out yet, but this book mentions it. So it does an admirable job of being as up to date as it possibly can be. It's just loaded with images, loaded with trivia. Cover price is $30. Like I said, I think on Amazon it was 20 or so, and I highly recommend it if you're interested in any of the behind the scenes history, trivia, what have you. This is a very attractive book. Stephen King, A Complete Exploration of His Work, Life, and Influences by Bev Vincent. Okay, so something else completely off the beaten path. Like I said, pointed out some of the figures and things that I collect, things that are Stephen King related. I also have some artwork, which I will show in this video as well, that is funny and it's Stephen King and pop culture related. But I was in an antique mall the other day and I saw something that kind of stopped me in my tracks. And it's a figure. It's a stylized Japanese animation style figure of Pennywise as a female. So it's this. So there, I guess Pennywise is walking in a big puddle of blood. There's Georgie's boat. Anyway, Pennywise, as represented in the 2017 film, but as a female, I had no idea that such a thing existed. But anyway, I didn't have any representation of that Pennywise. I have my figure over here of the Tim Curry Pennywise, and then this little figure right here that my sister actually made me as a Christmas present. It's one of the best and most thoughtful Christmas presents I've ever received. I laughed and laughed, and my son was thoroughly creeped out by this. But anyway, so it's a super random thing to add to the collection. I'd never heard of this company, but here's the box. It's a horror Bishujo statue stylized by Shunya Yamashita. And it was just up on a shelf and it was kind of tucked away, but it caught my eye. It's like, wait, what? What is this? What is this? But anyway, just a couple of fun things that don't necessarily fit the theme of the channel. But like I said, if you're like me, your collecting does not end strictly at books, but it includes all kinds of other things. So I'm going to take the camera down and I'm going to show you this artwork that I was talking about that I have hanging on my wall. So these are pieces by artist Trevor Wayne, and he's got this whole horror series where instead of famous props, the characters are holding up bananas or using bananas. So of course there's Pennywise with banana, Wendy Torrance from the Shining movie. She's got a banana in her hand instead of a knife, and Jack has a banana instead of an axe. And then, last but not least, Carrie at the prom with 2 bananas. So, yeah. I saw these and they immediately appealed to me. They immediately appealed to me. No pun intended. They appealed to me because, of course, I love the Stephen King movies and they are just kind of whimsical and ridiculous. And that's sort of the way I try to live my life. But anyway. So thank you for going on this little diversion with me. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your support of the channel. And wherever you are, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you later. Bye.